or even a budget.
Ms. Katongo Chileshe, a national gender budgeting expert, spoke about intersectionality and gender equality and equity.
When we are talking about achieving equality, we don't just consider individuals as women or men, but it's important to understand that there are different layers to an individual that will result in them being either advantaged or disadvantaged. So for example, we have at the base the gender. So we've already established what gender is, which is the socially constructed, the social construction of norms, responsibilities, expected behaviors, and power relations. So we know that. So because of that, we'll see differences between men, women, boys, and girls. In other words, society creates a script of who we will be, and we follow that script, and we'll see later how that advantages or disadvantages us. But that's not the only layer to individuals. We also have socio-economic status. So we have economic advantages or disadvantages. So you have two women or two men who have different experiences based on their socio-economic position. And it keeps on. The experiences of adolescents are not the experiences of adults, and they are not the experiences of children.
And during the meeting, a number of members of parliament were given time to share on what they know about gender-responsive budgeting.
They need to have a certain role which they can manage as well. But it's important, in these positions, you can give them positions, but not to expect that they can do what a man can do.
In our society, we also know they will tell you don't marry from that families. We identify families that don't keep those values, and our parents will tell us you can't marry from that family because they have these problems. So let us first address and respect our culture. We can't develop on a foreign culture. Go to China, they've never copied Western culture. They are living within their means. They are not using spoons, they are using chopsticks. So already there's a problem there. Ignoring our traditions and culture.
It is so sad that even my mother, who would also cultivate her own field, when FRA needs to pay, she will say, no, the money should be paid in Mr. Nyurenda's account. And on top of that, Mr. Nyurenda will also go and marry another woman. In this case, there will be what? Polygamous. No? I just want to give an example, which he also knows that the control of resources by men does not usually benefit the family. That's why for me, I believe that women, we are different from men. Will never be the same anyway.
And whatever things which we work for as men, especially here in Zambia, we work for our families, we work for our children, we work for our wives. Some time back, yes, we had a problem when we had property grabbing, when one spouse dies. This time around, the government has sorted out that issue through the constitution. So the women and the men, we have been promoting gender equality in our country.
And before the close of day one, members of parliament were divided in working groups to review the budgeting process from a gender perspective, and Rundazi Member of Parliament Honorable Brenda Nyirenda, MP, was first to give a summary of their findings.
We specifically sampled a few questions to see whether the budget institutions or ministries that were, which budget institutions were budgeting for this particular sector. Of course, we agreed that it is Ministry of Agriculture. And then the second question we had to deal with was which budget are relevant to any sector and how many of which sub-programs. We picked quite some, and what we realized was that according to the Zambian budget allocation program, there is more that is spent on food reserve agency, which is like national reserve management. There is a lot of resource that is going to that area. and not to agriculture development and productivity. That is what we found out.
The second group shared their group discussion on the gender-responsive budgeting.
We were looking at an output-based annual budget, Head 8 on Cabinet Office, Office of the President. And the program was gender equity and equality. So we looked at almost 10 questions. That is what we managed to look at. And the first question asked us to say which budget institutions, ministries, or agencies are budgeting for the sector. So when we looked at the budget itself, it informed us that this activity was being undertaken by the Office of the Vice President, that is under Cabinet Office, following the realignment of the various ministries. However, we have a view that apart from having just the Office of the Vice President championing this activity, all the ministries needed to take a leading role in this activity.
Solwezi Member of Parliament Dr. Alex Katakwe represented the third group and gave a summary of their findings.
In regards to the first part of the question, which budget institution or ministry and agencies are budgeting for the sector? So you have seen that indeed the sector here is the local government, and specifically women and youth empowerment has been the evidence that indeed it is touching the aspect of gender. However, we also seen that the allocation of 803 million plus is actually too little, because this is for the entire nation. But then if we look at constituencies, there are certain constituencies which are heavily populated. So this kind of allocation definitely excludes equity when it comes to the distribution.
The second day of the workshop began by recapping what was discussed on the first day. The meeting proceeded to look at the mandate of the Parliamentary Budget Office, and the Principal Clerk, Mr. Misao Kateshi, was on hand to respond to some of the questions from members of Parliament and staff of the National Assembly of Zambia. Dr. Trevor Taft, a key expert and team leader from South Africa, shared his thoughts about the budgeting process.
I think we need to define what is meant by for Parliament during that preparatory phase and what they can do, and then what is obviously the role of the finance ministry and the other ministries. Because, like you said, you know, those checks and balances are very, very important. So I think from where I'm sitting in my engagement, for example, with our National Treasury in South Africa and with Parliament, there's just quite a lot that can be done. You don't actually have to have a physical budget in front of you. And also that window of opportunity. Then you're much more prepared, even if you have a 10-day window of opportunity, like in a number of countries. You are well prepared to actually make comments.
And in conclusion, Honorable Alex Katakwe, Solwezi West Member of Parliament, thanked the organizers for empowering Zambian parliamentarians and National Assembly staff with knowledge of how to factor the gender-responsive budget in the national budget.
This has been a very, very wonderful team, quite educative. A number of issues that indeed as members of Parliament we never had the privilege to know about the issues of budgeting, factoring in the concept of gender responsive budgeting. That to us actually is an eye-opening issue, which indeed we are going to take up as members of Parliament. Otherwise, we believe that this is not just the first engagement with you. You have just opened the door, but we need to learn more, because eventually we need to come to a point where we need to see the fruit of this kind of engagement.
At the end of it all, members of Parliament were happy with the knowledge acquired from the workshop and shared their take-home messages.
You know, gender is an important issue in society. And actually, even in the modern society, as we do our budget, we need to put gender as an important issue. You know, gender actually, if you look at it, it's not only the women. It includes the children. It includes even the disability. So as we budget, we need to make sure that we take care of these people. If we leave them out, actually they will be marginalized all the time.
First and foremost is these kind of interactions in terms of these workshops. They do enhance and broaden our understanding as members of parliament, even as we are dealing with issues such as budgeting, in the sense that you know that as members of parliament we come from different backgrounds. Our understanding, our views are quite totally different. So bringing such a workshop like this one which we had, the gender responsive budgeting, basically apart from just looking at the issues of gender for me, then it has opened as you were around and you saw where in fact members of parliament would go to maybe other issues, but not to complete other issues related to issues of budgeting and gender. So in a way that then broadened our understanding. And come next year when you look at the budget, we will pay now a special eye in terms of the gender budgeting. You know that when the budget comes, there's no line which is specifically to indicate gender.
So what is coming out clear is that there's been a bit of insensitivity in terms of evidence-based presence of gender in terms of budgeting. So this has been a bit silent. It could have been there through any other program, but I think what is coming here, out of here, is that it must be a bit more informative to see how much and how our actions towards gender sensitivity we are practicing and what we are doing. In addition to that, there's also a need to have evidence-based research in order for us to adequately have an input in terms of to respond to the gender needs of our people.
It is our hope that the training of members of parliament on gender responsive budgeting will help members of parliament use gender lenses when considering the national budget for the benefit of the country.
The Coalition of African Parliamentarians Against HIV and AIDS, CAPA, Zambia chapter, now spearheading a call to One Health approach encompassing human, animal health and environmental sustainability, has continued to undertake familiarization tours so as to have an informed position on ZCCM-IH operations in the mining sector. CAPA delegations undertook a tour of Kabondo Resources Limited, a manganese mine in Serenja district. Kabondo Resources Limited was incorporated as a subsidiary of ZCCM-IH in 2019. The delegation was led by the first Deputy Speaker, Honorable Malungo Sangano, MP. The visit to the mine was preceded by presentations in order to have the general understanding of the mining activities being undertaken by Kabondo Resources Limited. Madam Second Deputy Speaker Honorable Sangano, as delegation leader, officiated at the occasion and was optimistic that the tour will help parliamentarians and policymakers have an understanding that will enhance their contributions to business on the floor of the House from an informed position.
I wish to acknowledge that mining continues to play an important role in the socio-economic development of this country and through its contribution to employment creation and foreign exchange earnings. I'm certain that the program is timely and very important, as it will equip our members with useful experiences, knowledge and insights of the current situation affecting the public and generally the mining sector. This fostering of evidence-informed decisions will help in policy formulation that will meet the needs of the local communities, investors, and the nation at large. As the nation strives for sustainable national socio-economic development, it is imperative that decisions that are anchored on the public good take precedence. I'm cognizant of the fact that besides the large pool of skilled labor, this nation is blessed with numerous natural resources, such as minerals, which the nation needs to harness for the benefit of its people and posterity.
Lands and Natural Resources Minister, who is also CAPA Vice Chairperson, Honorable Elijah Muchima, made his remarks and implored stakeholders to be concerned with issues that border on human animal health and environmental sustainability, as they are key to the development of the nation.
This formalization visit is cardinal in many respects, but allow me to just highlight 3 areas which interlie include the following. 1, as a fact-finding mission on ZCCM IH mining operations and investments. 2, as a platform to inform and enable parliamentarians appreciate the impact of mining on the environment and local communities. 3, provision of an arena for meaningful interaction between parliamentarians and mining experts, management and workers, so as to lay a channel for addressing bottlenecks that continue to beset the mining sector in Zambia. Madam Speaker, distinguished guests, it's gratifying to note that the Coalition of Africa Parliamentarians Against HIV/AIDS, that is CAPA, is cognizant of the fact that parliamentarians, as elected leaders and people's representatives, perform a wide range of functions which include policy making as well as legislative and oversight roles. As a strategic partner working under the auspices of National Assembly of Zambia, CAPA is composed of committed and hardworking members with diverse professional and technical expertise who are geared and ready for the task of contributing towards improved health outcomes for our people and animals, as well as environmental sustainability, which are essential for the country's socio-economic development.
As a local leader, Serenja District Commissioner Mr. Andrew Mpyakula was happy to have a high-powered delegation in this district, as it offered hope to the local people with regards to development of manganese mining.
Serenja is earmarked for development in terms of mining and the manganese in particular. Chair, it's very good, especially that you are saying that we are going to reach Kabundi resources. We are going to Kabundi from here. I want you, honorables, to go and appreciate what is happening in Kabundi. And I'm very happy that you see for yourselves what Serenja is able to produce in terms of manganese. I know that having received you here, we improve Serenja even economically. It will improve Serenja in terms of road infrastructure. It will improve Serenja in terms of employment, because we know that you are going to foster investment in this area.
In welcoming the delegation, then ZCCM-IH Chief Technical Officer Mr. Tisa Chama outlined the brief strategic plan ZCCM-IH is undertaking in line with the government policy to diversify into other minerals other than copper.
As ZCCM, we are carrying out our government plan to ensure that we diversify in terms of our mineral resource. At the moment, as we all know, Zambia has focused mainly on copper, on the copper belt. And at the moment, ZCCM has got a strategic plan, the 2020-2026, where we are carrying out government mandate to diversify the resources that we have in the minerals industry. One of those resources is the manganese that we have, and we have got a lot of manganese in the country, apart from copper. and Serenge happens to host the bulk of the manganese resource that we have. And ZCCM has got a huge, large-scale exploration license. We also have currently small-scale mining operations that we are conducting. So this morning, as we welcome you to Serenge, we particularly welcome you to our Kabundi resources, which is situated about 50 kilometers from here. We will be able to see that place. Now, Kabundi resources excites us as ZCCM in the sense that it is our baby. It is something that we started just about under 2 years ago.
Then followed an overview presentation on Kabundi Resources Limited and its operations in the area by Mr. Paul Mukuka, the Chief Executive Officer of Kabundi Resources Limited. In order to have more understanding on the investment ZCCM-IH has embarked on in the area of manganese mining through its subsidiary Kabundi Resources Limited, parliamentarians sought further clarifications on a number of areas of interest, to which responses were equally given.
I want clarity. What are your reserves, projected reserves? And also you have talked about challenges. Are you running it at a profit or losses, since you are saying a good price is outside there? Here you are getting between $60 to $70.
In terms of profitability, manganese is a bulk mineral. You need volumes to make, especially to cover your fixed costs. Last year, we didn't do too well. Like I said, we started a bit late. I think we only did about 4 months of the year in 2020. But this year, we are looking good to have a profit. That's why now we are looking at expanding on production, because most of our costs are fixed. So if you do more volume, you have more leverage to cover your costs and make a profit.
To know exactly when you came in with the element of providing a clinic and also providing water. At what stage did you do that? Was it after production or before?
Resettling the people that were on our license was one of the conditions that ZEMA gave us before we can start mining operation. So we started doing all that before we settled the people and started mining. So it was done before we started mining. ZEMA had to come in fact, again, to do an assessment of what we have done, if it was okay. That's why when I was showing the timelines, I think it was in March 2020 when ZEMA gave approval for the settlement plan that we had come up with.
During the presentations, Misenge Environmental and Technical Services, METS Limited, as represented by Mr. Joseph Kawe, an environmental and radiation specialist, gave comfort to the parliamentarians on their adherence to the Zambia Environmental Management Agency ZEMA's guidelines to Kabundi Resources Limited.
Kabundi Mining Resources is required that for the discharge of any water coming outside their operations going into the environment should not have any adverse impact on the receiving bodies in the streams or rivers that are nearby where they're operating from. If they're operating a smelter, they should ensure that the emissions, gas emissions, do not in any way affect anyone living in close proximity to their operations. The conditions are very, very clear with the licenses that were given to them by ZEMA.
To demonstrate the need to have a health workforce, National AIDS Council Program Director Mr. Fortune Tibamba presented a token to Kabundi Resources Limited through the delegation leader, Madam Second Deputy Speaker.
Through you, we present a box of preventive commodities that we would like you to present to Kabundi. Thank you. Our interest here as the National AIDS Council is health and wellness of the human resources and the communities surrounding our establishment. It is very important, senior management of Kabundi, that you do have a workplace and wellness policy in place, and that this should actually be able to cover issues to do with HIV and AIDS. It should be able to cover issues to do with tuberculosis. It should also be able to cover issues with COVID. In the event that these documents are obsolete or if they are not available, I would like to invite you to contact us. We do have the capacities. We can work together with you to revise or to develop these documents so that we're able to save our human resources better and also the surrounding communities.
The delegation then embarked on a field trip to the mining area. The first stop was at Kapumbu Primary School, which has received a facelift from Kabundi Resources Limited through construction of a 1x2 classroom block, rehabilitation of an old existing classroom block, and staff housing. In the health sector, Kabundi Resources Limited has constructed and donated a health post to the Kapumbu community. These two facilities have further been provided with safe and clean water by provision of a solar-powered borehole. The delegation then visited the site where the ore is mined in open pits, where Mr. Kabwe and Mr. Chama gave further explanations respectively.
Across this road here, that's another